Do you remember the original Hogwarts Legacy leak? I do, as it sent me on a 2-year journey of complete and utter shithousery trying to find answers. But I was thinking the leak was clearly an extremely early concept. I say this because there was no title screen at the end to name the project, some character animations were really rough, which made me ask myself, what was taken away? What was added? What was improved? And what looks worse? And I found some cool things and some great upgrades. And it's actually funny how many of the same shots were used in the leak, the reveal, and the state of play, but of course in far better quality. So what's happened then? Well, first of all, we can see that the planes of glass have now changed from 3 to 4, with the 4 house sigils being better represented. Of course, we all know the only one that matters, but we can also see a massive difference in terms of student population. This build of Hogwarts Legacy was on last gen, which sort of makes me ask the question of what PlayStation 4 and Xbox One ports are going to be missing out on. If you saw my state of play video, it was one of the first things I mentioned. How will the experience be different? Also, something else we never got to actually see in the state of play was some form of exploration marker, probably because they just wanted to highlight how the game looks. But if I were to take an educated guess, I would like to believe that it would be different now, as a lot of HUD changes have occurred since the leak, which I will mention even more in a second. But tiny things like the greenhouse, we can now see how much depth has been added to it, and even slight design changes. Of course, there are multiple greenhouses within Hogwarts. As long as the original narrative was designed for us to be a 5th year, this shot will most likely take place in Greenhouse 3, as it's the upgrade from Greenhouse 1, which is tailored for first year students. Now, although the minute details can't be observed in the original leak, we can see how consistent the tonality of Hogwarts Legacy has been from the beginning. I'm sure many changes occurred, but the palette of the wizarding world was clearly something that was thought about consciously, and you cannot complain about that. Now, in the original reveal, we get practically the exact same shot of the mooncalves, but with them looking far less pixelated. And I never actually mentioned this just because I didn't do a breakdown of the original reveal, just more of a holy shit, I've been waiting my whole life for this. By what it seems, mooncalves are obtainable, and now that we know that we can look after the beasts of the wizarding world, will that also include threats towards them that we need to fend off? Just a thought, because I said that hunting probably won't be available in Hogwarts Legacy simply because in the wizarding world doodah, it's a no-no. But there is a skeletal structure in the original leak of what looks like a dragon. Because of the wingspan, might be wrong. I highly doubt we will be able to skin the beast, but if we have the ability in order to dabble in the darker sides of the wizarding morality, I think it would be a fun addition. We clearly have usable currency in Hogwarts Legacy, so findable options for hunting beasts could be possible. And an extension on beasts, Graphorns. I actually thought this build of the Graphorns looked great, all things considering, and the design is not far off from what we saw in the state of play, but they are far more animated. But let's hop into the overall design. So at the moment, we don't really have much of an answer to how big Hogwarts Legacy's map is, but the original map in the leak is extremely vague. I mean, for instance, we know we have Hogsmeade in the game. We know that we can explore the Forbidden Forest. We also know that the Quidditch pitch exists, even if I have my doubts that it will be usable. I'm going to quickly use J.K. Rowling's sketch of Hogwarts. Of course, it's not to Hogwarts Legacy's exact scale, but it will give us a rough indication of some things. From the get-go, the Whomping Willow wouldn't be there, as Hogwarts Legacy is based in the 1800s and the Whomping Willow was placed in the 1970s. I still have no idea why it is present in my desktop background, so we can get rid of that. Hagrid's hut is sort of a redundant mystery that lacks history in many ways, so depending on whether Avalanche are using a gamekeeper/groundskeeper, it could well exist. But with Joanna's sketch, that's Hogsmeade on the bottom left and Hogwarts Castle on the bottom right. In the leaks map, there are some undiscovered areas, as you can see with X marks the spot, but the Quidditch pitch, now that we know it exists, will sit somewhere here, although I highly doubt it will have much use in Hogwarts Legacy, but surely, even from the bird's eye view, it would still be there. So maybe the pitch didn't exist in this build of Hogwarts Legacy, but the explorable area on the top of Hogwarts Legacy's map is interesting because of how close it is to Hogwarts' castle, with the lines more than likely being the Forbidden Forest. Now, with something that is that large of a scale, Avalanche can kind of do whatever they please. But my questions and curiosities lies within the size of the map. We've received a shot of what is more than likely Gringotts. Of course, which is located in Diagon Alley. A quick Harry Potter geography lesson for you: Diagon Alley is in London and Hogwarts is in Scotland. Now I have a feeling that Gringotts will only be used in the beginning of the game, just to kind of get it out of the way. We included it, now you can't complain sort of thing. But with the lack of indication on how to get there, I don't think it existed in this build, nor do I think train journeys did in general, as we can't see no tracks or station. But let's move on to the exciting parts, the gameplay. We never actually got to see a menu for the character customization in the state of play, but we can still see that some things still do exist, as we can change skin color, apply scars to our character, choose our houses, and so forth. Now, one of the most interesting parts in the original leak was the goblins, as it seems that they were always going to be the root of our problem, but I find one shot absolutely fascinating in particular. Now, when a game contains blood, it's sort of that thing that will turn a 16 plus into an 18. As well, most of the time it will contain death, right? And I don't think this fella has much of a chance of surviving that one. But with Hogwarts Legacy now officially being confirmed as a 16, which when you're mixing in constant combat, it's bound to happen whether it's violent or not, it goes to show that Avalanche has pulled back on some things in order to make Hogwarts Legacy as accessible as possible. Now, is it a big deal? No, not at all. But it makes me curious to whether Avalanche were aiming for an 18 age rating. In terms of business, makes no sense. I actually really like the look of the leaked spellcasting and combat system. I love how engaging the camera is. It's one of those slight adjustments that, depending on where NPCs are placed during combat, would consistently change. And the leak also had a UI, something I kept moaning about in my breakdown video. But the button layout is interesting. If I quickly mention what is available on screen, we have Expulso, which is a curse to make things go boom boom, large explosions. We then have Stupefy, the stunning spell, and Depulso, basically a wizarding's variant of a push. Now, when I was theorizing in potential avenues for spellcasting to be efficient in my breakdown, I used some bizarre comparisons. The Batman Arkham free flow combat system, I was just trying to meet reality with fluidity, whilst the approach in the leak seems far more assisted, assigning a spell to each button. Hello, Chamber of Secrets. Now, although I said I liked the look of the camera during combat, if that was the case, Hogwarts Legacy would be extremely dependent on assisted gameplay. In other words, it would have been really button mashy. Whilst in the state of play, Hogwarts Legacy looks far more freely dependable on what we can attack, the use of the environmental objects and so forth. And talking of environmental objects, I mean, look at the destructible environments. If destructible environments still exist in Hogwarts Legacy, it will be fantastic. It will be incredible. I mean, look at this. It is insane. Something that looks incredible with Hogwarts Legacy is how Avalanche are pulling off the combinations of vertices and meshes. Whoever is coding and animating this, I hope you get the fattest of pay rises, because you, fellow human, or humans, deserve it. This is fucking insanity, and we have seen Reparo used in the state of play. So if we do still have destructible environments that aren't eye-catching and demand our attention, with lead lines saying, "Hey, hit me, look, I'm glowing, you can hit me for a cool sequence," it would be phenomenal. It's one of those details that exist in the wizarding world that would make perfect sense, but it's not an easy job. But even if the destructible environments is limited, the current use of Reparo in the state of play still looks incredible. It could be something that can lead to great moments of level design, gasm, puzzles and all sorts. But sticking to combat, I'm not entirely sure whether this is the same level that was played a minute ago. It looks like it, but if it is, that means that changing spells would be able to happen on the fly, which is something I personally want. But it was a reason to why I was so pissed off during the state of play and kept saying, okay, you have told me something that exists, but you haven't actually provided a decent explanation on execution. If this is still the same approach for spellcasting, with the assignments of buttons being how we cast them, changeability is really going to stump momentum. It wouldn't be the smoothest of design. You're engaging in combat, your slots are full. Quickly, a slow motion menu, new spell, and on you go. For some reason, the automatic thought that I had in my state of play video that would be slightly fitting would be how The Witcher allows you to change spells mid-combat. Now that worked well for The Witcher because it only allowed you to choose one spell, so I'm eager to see the equation that Avalanche have put together. But look how different the combat system is, with there being a crosshair, and Avalanche have been fairly consistent with these bloody barrels, which makes complete sense, as everybody of course knows that was exactly how Harry defeated Voldemort. Fuck you off, this cuntious! far more eye-pleasing now, and in fact far more interactive. I mean, we've seen a few shots of transfiguration spells, which I cannot imagine will be that beneficial in the grand scheme of gameplay in the final build of Hogwarts Legacy, as it would be damn near impossible not to transform objects into the same repetitive thing. Although we don't get a great deal of how they work in the original leak, it is still fascinating seeing how having a hands-on approach in the classes was always the intention. Likewise with the use of trolls. Now, the trolls don't visually particularly look too different in terms of artistic tonality. In the state of play, we can now see that there are different variants of trolls spread throughout the map. It was the same in the leak, minus the variants, with them being in multiple locations even back then. And I must admit, looking back at it now and what we have received from the reveals, there has been a lot of consistency from Avalanche's first witness build of Hogwarts Legacy, which is only a good thing. It means that the 2 years up until the reveal, they had the opportunity to make better animations and really focus on the tiny details. But I mean, when I first saw the leak, I was in absolute awe of what was stolen from Avalanche. Not that I'm condoning it, but it was great marketing that made me watch every passing game showcase entirely up until the reveal.
This is a question for both of you, actually. You mentioned failures before. What's the actual biggest failure that you've gone through to get to where you are?
That's a tricky question.
Fallout 76.
It was like, yes, this is what I need to be seeing, and this is what I want to play. And it's actually quite cool looking back at the original leak and seeing what we have now. As I have previously mentioned, the doubt that people felt with Avalanche being assigned the duty of creating a Harry Potter game because of their previous releases in their portfolio. But it was a huge jump from a then small team with a lot of built-in pressure from people like myself. And personally, I think their evolution from the first leak to what we have seen recently is incredible. I will forever root for the underdog, and fuck me, I want Hogwarts Legacy to be perfect. But you can see how much care has gone into Hogwarts Legacy. This isn't a let's grab some money from Potterheads. This could potentially be a monumental moment for the studio to put their name on the map with the big dogs of the gaming industry. And Avalanche aren't cutting corners. For those who voted on the community poll for this video to be made, thank you very much. It definitely helps me with time scheduling and so forth. It is something I'm going to be using far more often, as I don't particularly want to use Twitter and I definitely don't want to promote it. But quickly before the screen goes black, my Suicide Squad / Sunset Overdrive video is getting so much love, and in that video I celebrated the 500 subscriber mark, and yet since I uploaded it, everything on the channel is just going up. So thank you so much for giving the videos your time. This channel has given me so much ambition as of late, it is insane, and it's awesome to see that people are enjoying what is being made. So truly, wholeheartedly, thank you. It means a lot. As per usual, much respect, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you in the future.
The choices you make now will define the legacy of Hogwarts.